Welcome, everyone, to greetings from Atlanta and from Washington State. We are really happy to be with you on this Martin Luther King Jr. holiday to talk about the role of the arts and how our creative energies can be used to advance the beloved community. And it starts with me. This is the theme of the King Center's Global Community Summit this week. There have been wonderful programs that you can go back and watch from the King Center's and the Carter Center's website. This broadcast tonight is jointly organized by the King Center and the Carter Center. And we've got a wonderful couple of guests here. Actually, Josh Griffin from the Carter Center and I are welcoming Chelsea Richardson, our good friend from Seattle, educator and poet and mother, fantastic artist whom we'll be hearing from. Please join us, ask questions in the chat. We are here to talk about how we, on an individual level, can use our creativity. Why? Because the arts get to the heart of the matter, always, quicker than a newspaper article, quicker than a 600-page report, quicker than a film, a song or a painting, something quick and straight to the heart can actually move hearts. And isn't that what we need right now? Each of us needs to begin to reassess and think about how we will be building the beloved community, and the arts play a tremendous role. So I'd like to welcome you and turn it over to my colleague, Josh Griffin, to lead us through the program tonight.
First of all, I want to say amen. I felt like I sat through a mini sermon right there, Karen. Thank you, and welcome everybody from Seattle to Atlanta to potentially out in London. Welcome to the Forum on Human Rights. My name is Josh Griffin, and I'll be moderating today's conversation along with Karen. Today, we'll be discussing how the arts can be used to overcome systems of oppressions by touching people's hearts and souls in ways that galvanize diverse groups of people, bringing them together for the common good and to dismantle all the isms, both domestic and abroad. If you'd like to ask questions to today's guests, you can do so by joining the Forum on Human Rights. I believe the field for this is on the right side of the page that you're currently looking at. So please join, ask questions. I would love to be able to get that audience participation. As Karen alluded to, today we have Chelsea Richardson joining us. She's a Seattle-based poet, educator, mother, and author of All Water Has Perfect Memory. Thank you for being here, Chelsea.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Karen, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So also during this conversation, we'll be showing clips from past conversations we've had with Joseph Guay, an Atlanta-based visual artist, and Kareem Samara, a London-based musician, composer, and community organizer. We're going to go ahead and just jump straight into today's conversation by playing our Grammy-nominated rendition of Baby Please Don't Go by Cam Franklin, Kareem Samara, and produced by Saman Ashari. So sit back and relax.
Now, baby, please don't go. Now, baby, please don't go. Now, baby, please don't go back to third ward. You know I love you so. Baby, please don't go. You got me way down here. You got me way down here. Before I be your dog, I'll make you walk the log. Now, baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go. Now don't you call my name. Now don't you call my name. You got me way down here wearing all James, baby, please don't go, baby, please don't go. I'll be your man done gone. I'll be your man done gone. He left the town for me, had his shackles on. Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go. Now turn your lamp down low. Now turn your lamp down low. I beg you all night long, baby, please don't go back to third ward, baby, please don't go, baby.
The ending of that song gets me every time. It's eerie, but it's beautiful. For those of you that don't know, Karen has a background in music, went to Berkeley College, and so I'm going to let her explain to you kind of just like what drew you to this song from a musical standpoint, and you know, why did you ask me to reach out to Kareem and bring him on to this show? Yeah. Thank
you. Well, I heard this song. I saw an article about this this piece of art in a 972 magazine, which is a Israeli newspaper, and they were featuring it because it brought together two Palestinian artists, Kareem Samara and Saman Ashrawi. Saman is a producer and Kareem is a oud player. They and Saman lives in Houston, and he was friends with Cam Harris, this beautiful blues singer who you just heard singing. And they had this idea about bringing the blues from the Black American culture together with Palestinian Arabic music. And it just hit me so strong when I heard the piece. It knocked me over. You have to go back and listen to it. And Kareem explained to us how the Arabic scales migrated from the Middle East to West Africa because of some of the migrations and trade that happened. And then when people were kidnapped into slavery from West Africa, they brought that scale with them here to the United States as enslaved people. And this is where the blues scale comes from. It shows our connectedness then back in ancient history, but it also moved me because the Palestinian struggle and the African American struggle for human rights are very similar. And there are linkages being made between these two movements for Black American rights, for equal rights in this country, and for equal rights of Palestinians and Israelis. And it just was like, wow, this tells the story. You have to just immerse yourself in that music. You hear the blues scale being played on an Arabic oud, an Arabic instrument that has this quality to it that's just, it trembles and it sings and it's in such a beautiful way. The first time I heard it, I had to just stand up and walk around the house and shout and everything. And so I said to Josh, I said, get a hold of this guy, Kareem, and let's see if he'll come on. And so our viewers should go to the Forum on Human Rights website. You can see this fantastic hour-long conversation with Kareem Samara, Saman Ashrawi, and Cam Harris about how they came up with this piece. And I think what it really demonstrates is the power of music, in this case, to just create this human connection and tell all these multiple stories with one story. And it just blew my mind, and I just had to get folks to talk about it and listen to it together. So that's how it came about.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you asked me to do that and was able to sit and take part in that. Chelsea, as someone who just heard the song, I believe, like, what are your thoughts? What emotions kind of come about as you sit and heard that song and hear Karen's description of it?
That's really, really moving. Especially when you hear afterward, the interconnectedness of those who were enslaved, and the scale that was used to create blues came from Palestinians. I just can't even. I just can't fathom, and it's mind blowing. I'm just kind of shocked right now. It makes me want to learn more about it. The name of the instrument, what was that?
Oud, O-U-D. It's the oud. It's that. Have you seen a teardrop shaped guitar looking thing? And in the promotional image of this roundtable, you'll see Kareem playing the oud.
Okay.
And it's crazy.
How many strings does it have? It makes me think of the kora.
Yeah, it's similar. I don't know how many strings it has, but it's you're right. It's just like, what? And I'm glad that you could listen to it first and then go back. So now you have to go back and listen to it, and go to the original website where you're going to get a better sound quality with your headphones, get some good noise canceling headphones, and really immerse yourself. At the very end, Cam, in the roundtable that we did on this, we asked her about those vocals at the end, that choir, like, I mean, you could almost just feel, that sound of, people working in the field singing, just the suffering that was involved, it's just, and joy. So the other thing that Cam talked about is that we have to remember that music and art is a vehicle for joy. Not to get too bogged all the time in all the suffering, but realize it's our vehicle for not allowing ourselves to be trammeled down under the suffering. And I'm really grateful to her for just holding that up, because, I tend to be very dramatic, melodramatic about all the suffering and the pain, because I'm affected by it. It's like, don't lose sight of the joy that art brings, and we need it to restore ourselves. So that was the other flip side of it. You just feel joy when you're listening to that music.
No, absolutely, definitely. And I think additionally too, that I took away from that conversation is that the history that's within music, and really any endeavor. And it's worth taking the time to really dive deep and unpack, to understand, where things come from, to be able to better know how, it ties into what you potentially are doing, or how you contribute to society. So now we're going to go ahead and transition into a clip from Kareem talking about Palestinian solidarity with the African-American struggle. This was used in a promotional video, but it just really just talks about the interconnectedness. That's kind of an overlapping theme that I hear right now.
After George Floyd's murder, as Palestinians, we were very active as a community in demonstrating solidarity with our African-American brothers and sisters. And this song seemed to be a personal link for Saman, not necessarily a community link. But having spoke with me about it and how important that song was to me, there was this sudden opportunity to do something with this piece of music, make it our own, and put some kind of solidarity into action through the art that we make. And it just became another level of our activism, our solidarity, and the start of, you know, perhaps another discussion about the relationship between Arabic music, the blues, its history, the instruments, the scales. But that was something that just sort of came naturally. So we really started a conversation in a community within this piece.
What I really appreciate about that little segment is the community aspect, right? It sounds as if Kareem, you know, was moved to get involved and take action after George Floyd was murdered, and he reached out to his friend Saman in Houston, and then Saman reached out to Cam, and they all three of them collaborated to produce what you just listened to, and now it's up for a Grammy. And I don't think their intention was to, you know, be nominated for a Grammy, but them just being intentional about their actions, they were able to build community amongst themselves and find roles that they can play in advocating for social change, social justice. Yeah. So when y'all hear that clip, how does that inspire you? Like, what type of communities do you think of? Do you belong to that are trying to create change?
I'll just say I'm really inspired by the connection that's becoming more and more active between the struggle for equal rights in the United States and the Palestinian struggle for equal rights. It's fascinating because it's very similar. And yet the conditions, you know, Desmond Tutu, who recently passed away, talked about how the apartheid-like conditions for Palestinians is worse than it was in South Africa, if you can imagine. And when you go there for yourself, you see it for yourself, you cannot believe it. You cannot believe what you're seeing with your own eyes, that a human system could be devised, actively devised. I mean, we talk about this. We're at the Carter Center right now. We're studying the book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. And we're learning about how the caste system was designed and how it's still with us. And it's 400 years old, right? It's like, so we're looking at it, we're learning about it and seeing how it's playing out. This is happening in Palestine right now, like active, like the creation of the caste system is newer there. And it's very much, you know, some people have these rights and others don't. So it just, for me, it's like human solidarity is what we need everywhere. And that's what the lesson is for me this week with the King holiday and the King Center. It starts with me. I have to look and how to be in solidarity with people who are really working for equality. So for me, that's how I approach it.
And how would you encourage people to be in solidarity, you know, with
Yeah.
others? Like, how do people go about doing that?
Well, right now we're really calling on the Biden administration to be more effective in pressuring the Israeli government to take certain steps. Recently, the Israeli government designated 6 human rights organizations, like, think of that, nonviolent human rights, as terrorist groups, not like affiliated with terrorists or something. No, as terrorist organizations, human rights organizations, 6 of them. And we work very closely with them. So, and the Biden administration has not taken any action to address this. They really haven't done enough to stop the settlement expansions, the evictions of Palestinians from their homes. Just yesterday, another family's house in Jerusalem was destroyed, and evictions are happening. It's really ethnic cleansing. And our government, the United States government, has to be more active because we are an ally of Israel and we give Israel a lot of money every year. So I think what people should do, and you know, this song is really powerful to me, is to create communities of solidarity. Then reach out to your member of Congress, call the White House, write a letter, get involved in organizations that are working for equality between Israelis and Palestinians, and you know, get involved. It's not hard to do. Every college campus has a club. Every city has an organization that's working on Palestinian rights. The Carter Center's website has information. it's very easy to get involved if you really want to be a part of that.
Wow. I mean, I think you really pointed out something really valuable and important, Karen, that the United States government gives the Israeli government money, right? And as we sit here and contemplate our the legacy that MLK left behind, I think that we would be remiss, or I would be remiss, if we didn't recognize how disturbed MLK would probably be with our connection to the destruction of any group of people, and any group of people being dehumanized the way the Palestinians are.
That's right.
So, and I actually just keep thinking about this quote from MLK that I've been that last week I tried to work with some of my students through. I just want to share it real quick, if that's okay. It is, "Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic." So there's more. It's a really long quote, but it's important. "Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." And if we can't forget that MLK was arrested 29 times by the police, and pulled over on trumped up charges of like speeding and going 30 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. And he was considered someone who the United States government actually did not appreciate or protect, because he was questioning power. And so where would he be? Where would he be in thinking about this struggle and the connection between Palestinians and Black Americans and any other marginalized group in our country? And that's so amazing to me, that this song, right, could lead us into this conversation. And that brings it back to what you said earlier, that how much art really pulls us into this conversation about human rights.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And toward the end of his life, Martin Luther King is so interesting. People often, most people will focus on certain aspects of his work. I have a dream, content of your character, those beautiful words of his. But what they don't really focus on is that in the last year of his life, he talked about the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. He criticized the Vietnam War, and he asked America to stop being a purveyor of violence in the world. This was at the last year of his life. I even watched a video today of him saying, I still have hope, but that early hope was a little naive. I think we have to really focus on power and how we enter those spaces with love, yes, but with demands for justice and economic justice, the rights of the poor, ending wars abroad. He was becoming he had really tied all the pieces together. Where do we go from here, in his last book, in that whole series of speeches he gave at the Riverside Church? That's what people should read, because that's, after years of learning and mobilizing, that's what he came to. Exactly as you said, Chelsea, is like these things are connected. So this is our chance every year during the King Week to really reflect on what he was able to teach us, especially at the end of his life. That's really powerful stuff.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'm just sitting, just thinking about, what Chelsea identified as how the arts are able to draw us in and, really be a connection point, or give us a platform to look for intersections. When I think about climate change, right, how the arts can be used to advocate for climate change. And I know, Chelsea, you have a piece called "Setting Suns as Bright as Wildfire." I would love for you to, read that to our audience, and really just, speak your truth, poet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Scientists say we are at least 60% water. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams. It is no wonder we are melting glaciers and setting suns as bright as wildfire across the Amazon and California and California and California. We are flooded with centuries of unfinished business. And if our ancestors are still dreaming, I believe they would not hesitate to invite us into their nightmares too. A fragile and wanting nightmare like cracked teeth begging for a smile, like sheets of ice retreating in Antarctica and Greenland. Screams escaping to the back of the throat like the ocean absorbing the earth's fever for the body to catch and hold. The Mississippi Basin's love affair with this dying climate. And wide like the volatile waves who swallowed your great mothers and fathers whole. The pale green reef that dressed their bodies and wrapped round necklines. But don't you remember the way the water does? Precious arms and elbows flailing like tree arms in hurricanes, chains and endless blue night sky rippling underwater, tender twinkling stars drifting from heaven above into their open eyes. Maybe Saturn or Jupiter waving across their drowning chests. How the moon wanted so bad to taste their black skin that it shoved itself into the bottom of the sea so that it could sit with them. Doesn't this water taste different now? Thick as blood, choking on bullets, like Tamir's 12-year-old lungs filling up to the brim of this earth's mouth. Her kiss of death along shorelines. It is no wonder we are up to our necks in debt. See, this water is unforgiving. It doesn't matter how much we refuse to reckon with our past, who loves it, or how much it is unloved. It will become fresh with poison. Did you think a pure White House and reef-colored paper would protect you from flooding? We are all just a few degrees separate from someone's slave, someone's master, someone still waiting in this water, water curtsying to ward off demons, while this water is still rising, still a fraction of a human, still remembering. Thank you.
Let me start off by saying you should purchase Chelsea's book because every one of her poems in that book are just as beautiful as that and make you reflect and look at life and all its intersections. Can you tell us, Chelsea, what inspired you to write this piece?
Well, thank you for saying that people should buy my book. I appreciate that little plug. But
let's share where they can get it somewhere.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If we can, people can purchase it if they want to at chelsearichardson.org. It's CHELSEY Richardson. And I don't know if we can share that somewhere else, but really the reason that I started writing this piece was just trying to find a space where I could connect what we're experiencing now, which is the climate crisis, and something that James Baldwin actually referred to in that most recent uncovered interview that has recently been released. I can't remember who the interviewer was, but he brought up this idea that we are dealing with what sort of a curse from the beginning of slavery, that it was at that point when he believed that the United States was cursed. And I know that can sound a little witchcrafty or whatever, but in reality, if we start to think back to when we started really utilizing our oceans to create a boost in our economy, it did start with slave ships. And we start to think about things being imported across across the world through our water, it's really not that difficult to make those connections, that maybe some things just needed to be left alone, and we wouldn't be harming the world in so many different ways through this really destructive capitalistic idea of using people to make money. Yeah, that's the reason that I started writing it, trying to find that space that actually made sense, and thinking about all the wildfires and the things that we're struggling with right now.
Chelsea, I love this poem so much, and I've heard you recite it a number of times, and every time I get more from it, and I really ask the audience to really get this poem and read it, and reflect deeply, because it's so deep. There's a question there. Where did it come? Jason, can you put that back up? Oh, that's an interesting question. I'll read it. Very powerful poem, Chelsea. Do you think there is a connection between the continuing fight for rights for Palestinians and Black Americans and the continued harm to the earth and its climate? Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. I'm curious about it, though. I mean, there, in my mind, of course, there's a connection. War in and of itself is destructive to our climate. So that's the only way I know how to answer that question. I definitely think there's a connection. I think that when we dig into the earth with bombs, we're harming the climate. It's pretty. Is that? Do you think, Karen? Is there another way to answer?
Yeah. No, you're right. And I don't know if people know this, but the United States military is the largest single emitter of greenhouse gases. And in Kyoto in the 1990s, when that treaty was devised, the United States insisted that the US military emissions be excluded from calculations of emissions. What? It's like, how did they do that? And this is becoming more and more known. And during the last round at COP26 in Scotland, one of the prominent journalists asked, I think it was the secretary, whoever was there representing the US, about this question. What about US emissions? Military, just the military, never mind the United States as a country. And, there really isn't a good answer for that. So militarism, and this is why I think it's powerful that when the way King talks about the intersection between the triple evils, he calls it, racism, poverty, and militarism, it's all connected, because when the United States spends more on its military budget than every other major military country combined, the United States spends more money. And King said in his Vietnam speech, his Riverside Church speech, that any nation that dedicates more money to violence, the machinery of violence, the military, than it does on social uplift is approaching spiritual death. This is King's words. So, we have to realize that all this money is going into war, as Chelsea said, and not going into social uplift. So not only is it harmful to that issue, but it's also harmful to our own country. We don't have enough money to pay for our schools, for our roads, for healthcare. People can't get healthcare, affordable housing. So it is those things are interlinked, and we've got to see them as interconnected.
Yeah, I think that seeing them as interconnected, if I'm trying to kind of like go back to that question about connection between the struggle of Black Americans and Palestinians, and I think that most great revolutionaries like MLK have always pointed to the destruction of Black people and the destruction of other people out of this country as interconnected. That's why MLK so adamantly protested the Vietnam War, right? And so I think that those struggles are connected. If that gets to the heart of the question, I hope that that makes sense. Also, just think of coming back to the arts. I think of Alice Walker wrote a children's book called Why War is Never a Good Idea. And it was released probably somewhere around 2009, maybe. But she says, the war has a mind of its own. War never knows who it is going to hit. War has bad manners. War eats everything in its path. And I think that that's another way to just basically explain that it is just pure destruction. And people's struggles are united across the world when we think about the amount of a huge budget that is supposed to be used to protect people within the country is actually being used to destroy others outside of it.
I think additionally too, what comes to mind as I sit here and listen to y'all talk is how the America has intentionally put developing countries at a disadvantage through, the World Bank or the IMF and just horrific schemes that make it impossible for them to really pay back those loans and be in this debt and in servitude, which then you could look at resource extraction and how these countries are unable to use their own resources to develop, but then at the same time extracting these resources emit a lot of carbon. So it's just this ongoing cycle that the global north imposes its will onto the global south, and it just puts them at a massive disadvantage economically, across the board, but then additionally doesn't really allow them to be able to self-actualize and be able to grow and be self-sufficient, because we need their resources, we need their capital, and you see it play out throughout history. Karen, I think I cut you off. That was a tangent.
No, not at all. That was great. Again, back to King's triple evils: poverty, materialism, and racism and militarism. You just think of them as one. What you just described is the troika of those three things. We have exploited people, non-white people of color all over the world for their resources, from colonialism, slavery, etc., until now. I have an electric car, yay, but where's that coltan coming from? It's probably coming from the Congo, and the Carter Center has been working with human rights activists and others in the Congo to try to monitor who's producing all of these natural resources, and trying to make sure that the wealth from the land goes to the people and not to corrupt people, but also people who others who are doing the mining there without sharing it with the people. So our economic system has failed too many people. That's what King was trying to tell us at the end of his life, that capitalism on its own, without a commitment to people, without being people-oriented, is one of the evils. So it does, one of those ideas feeds right into the other. And also, Chelsea, I wanted to say, last week on Thursday afternoon, we had at the King, during the King Center's Beloved Community Global Summit, I had the honor of moderating a panel with two young climate activists, one from Uganda and one from here in the United States, and young youth activists. And it was fantastic. Folks can go on the King Center's website, and all those videos are archived. But basically, this is a young generation of people who are trying to lift up the case for saving the planet, and they're young. We know about Greta Thunberg, and she's like this. Vanessa Nakate is a friend of hers, and so they were, in these different global summits together. And there's a lot we can do, and you have raised a lot of awareness with your poem about the threat of climate change. And their one request, when I sort of put it to them, what should we do? Basically, the young activists and the activists are really cut out of the negotiations at the COP process. That's the UN negotiations. And so we're going to be looking at how we can remedy that, make sure that young activists can travel there, can get published, can get resources for their organizations. But what do you think? Speaking of arts, there's a film that came out, Don't Look Up. I don't know if you've seen it yet, on Netflix. It's one of Netflix's most viewed films ever. And we watched it over Christmas break with my family, and it was just like, this movie, film is another thing as an art form. It can really convey something. There has been this conversation out of that film that I've been looking at on Twitter. People are really challenging the media. Why aren't you covering climate change? In the movie and Don't Look Up, it's like they make a joke of how the media never covers climate. It's like they want to talk about the celebrities and this and that and this shiny thing over here and that stupid thing over there. But the comet is going to hit the earth, and the media is ignoring it, and they're like, "Wow!" Their hair's on fire. So it was brilliant as as a piece of art. What do you think? I mean, can you think of other examples of where on this issue of climate that you've written about so beautifully, how we get through to people to be able to wake up and do what's needed?
That's a big question. I think that we just have to keep talking about it and actually get real about what we're actually dealing with. We have to listen to young people, like you said, allow them the opportunity, because those young people that you brought up are actually doing far more work than I can do right now. And I think they're probably even more knowledgeable than I mean, I can only speak for myself, but they're definitely more knowledgeable than me about what is actually happening and what actually needs to change, in order for us to pull all the way out and actually see the problem for what it really is. Yeah, I think that people need to start paying attention to scientists when they talk. I think people need to start actually really engaging in true conversations about where what your local community is doing to fight against climate change. And I think that's where we have to start, at least to have a true conversation.
No, absolutely. And I think that gets back to the idea of like, it starts with me and just kind of knowing, what role you can play in creating for advocating for change. And like these issues that we're discussing aren't siloed, right? They all intersect one another. And so I hope you've been able to sit and, think about how we started out with this song, Baby, Please Don't Go. And Karen, unpacked that for you, how, the Arabic scale was brought from East Africa across to West Africa. These bodies were stolen, brought across the Middle Passage, forced to work in the Deep South. And then, Chelsea comes in and does a great job really talking about climate change with Black bodies and the effect and how it's still, impacting us now in the present day. And so I'm going to go ahead and transition into this next clip by Joseph Guay, who's Atlanta-based visual artist. And in this clip, he talks about what individuals can do to be able to get involved. And I think that's really helpful to know what you can do on a personal level.
That people can walk away and see that no matter what you do for a living, no matter where you stand, you can make a difference in some sort of form. I mean, I was just a visual artist. I used to make, something to put in your house. And I wanted to see some change happen. And just from my small platform, I've been able to get a lot of attention and a lot of people to see things in different ways, open their eyes up to what's taking place around them, and also understand that it doesn't have to be an argument. Anyone can make a statement to the small group that they're around, to their family members, to their friends, to their co-workers. It's not that hard. To create change, you have to start immediately within yourself and then within the little world around you. And we can all do that in some form or fashion together. When it comes to action steps, some people get overwhelmed sometimes. They think like, oh, well, I don't know personally know the governor, or I don't know anyone sitting in office. So that sort of stops them right there. I've realized through my situation that by talking to whoever's close to you, you can sort of start that degree of separation. And then suddenly you're like, oh, well, we could sign these petitions together. And then so-and-so may know the governor, or we can at least get it to his secretary. And you can start making steps as a group. Because as an individual, it's very easy to walk away from momentums of change because you get overwhelmed and you think, I can't make that big of a difference. So I've worked with artists around me, family members, friends, and tried just on that level, like, hey, can you write this story? Hey, can you take pictures of this and post it on your website? Anything just to get that going. So, you could take a picture of George Floyd and send it out to every friend that you know and say, please post this. That makes a difference. Even these little things, and then eventually it gets in the right hands. So there's no way to feel that you don't have the capability of change, especially in today's world. We're so linked by social media. So just putting things out there on your own little channels can make massive changes in the world.
Instant reactions, thoughts.
Well, I love that. And I was thinking about that for this panel discussion. I really want to encourage people both to explore their own creativity, because everyone has a creative self, and now with TikTok and Twitter and all these vehicles, it's incredible how many people you can reach if you unlock something authentic and people relate to it. We had a discussion, Josh, the other day, or you did, at the King Center's Global Community Summit with Rev Yearwood, who's with Vote or Die, the Vote or Die effort. And he's talking about all the artists that he's worked with. And, sometimes big famous artists are, preoccupied with living and taking care of their careers, et cetera. So it's not always the big artists who are going to make an impact. Maybe it will. But I feel like it's just average people, you and me, unleashing that creative self, educating ourselves about the world around us, and then really just talking to each other through an artistic form. I think it's very powerful. I'll just say one more thing. When I was a kid, there were certain films, movies, and TV shows and things like that, books that completely shaped me. Sounder, the movie Sounder. I learned, I cried and cried and cried after that movie, which was a terrible story of injustice in the criminal justice system in the South. A Raisin in the Sun with Sidney Poitier, who just passed away, about how Black men just struggle to be strong men in our culture, and housing discrimination. So many films like that. Roots. When I was a kid, Roots came out on TV, and we would just cry every night and learn about slavery. This art forms are crucial for us to educate ourselves and to reach out to other people. So I'm glad you played that clip from Joseph, Josh, because I do think that we can all do it, and we can patronize or buy products from and go to shows of artists who are using their voice for social change as well. That's really meaningful.
Yeah, what I liked was that he really pointed out that we all can make a difference, and that sometimes it feels impossible because there's an idea that is so large. There's a system working with that idea, whatever that idea might be. And I think that we get scared, and we worry that we won't make a change. But I think for anyone who is an artist, as long as you're true to yourself, it shouldn't matter. Your art should always be true to you, right? So regardless of whether or not it will become popular or make you famous or whatever, your role is to tell the truth, and try your best to reflect the world around you in a realistic way. My mom used to actually, when I was younger, sometimes I would read something to her and she would go, "Do you ever write anything happy?" And that was her criticism, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I learned to just be an observer of problems, and then that's what my art is right now, and I try my best to make it sound good or draw someone in, but at the crux of it, I'm wanting to bring some awareness, and spoken word really lends itself to bringing awareness, and so I really love what he said, and I encourage people to do the same with their art.
Chelsea, do you remember the James Baldwin quote that you recited for us some time ago about the role of the artist? I don't know if you have that on hand.
I'm gonna find it real quick.
Okay. And Nina Simone said something like, music and art is telling the truth. If it's not telling the truth, it's not music, it's not art, she said. If it's not telling the truth, because we have entertainment, there's a difference, right? But art is telling the truth about something. Or it's not art, it's like it's something else, she said.
No, I agree. And Chelsea too, I don't know if you have that quote pulled up, but like
I think she has it. Whatever.
Okay, my bad. All you.
Are you sure you don't want to say what you were going to say before you forget?
Sure. Thank you. No, I was just going to say, could you elaborate on how you think educators can use art within the classroom and really try to help young students that show artistic abilities or not, how they can use that within their lives?
Yeah, I think that one of the ways that educators can really encourage young people to use art is to create a space in which you are not in control of everything. And so that goes back to thinking about letting go of your own power and really letting young people come to you and express what it is that they want to understand and they want to know about. And sometimes that means like really trying to, that if that all your students really love TikTok because they can't put their phones down, then that means that you try and find ways to connect with them. Maybe you find activists on TikTok and you show them that the art of being a content creator on TikTok can be used to bring about awareness. Another thing that I think is really valuable is to just show them something. Just introduce art to them that they may or may not have ever heard of. I write with my students a lot, and I try to give them that space to share their writing. And sometimes I have students just come up to me and share with me a little snippet of something they wrote. I had a student actually the other day share from a journal entry, kind of like a sci-fi piece that they wrote that was only about, a page long, but it was really truly a reflection of what our society could turn into in the future. So I think just opening up that door to let them explore different kinds of art and also show them how it can be used. But this James Baldwin quote is, the precise role of the artist is to illuminate that darkness, blaze roads through that vast forest, so that we will not, in all our doing, lose sight of its purpose, which is, after all, to make the world a more human dwelling place. And that's not the exact quote that I shared before, but this is a whole essay that he wrote, where he talks about the role of the artist is to share the bittersweet truth.
And I remember one thing he said that you had quoted about him, that the artist should be at the table. The artist should be there when decisions are made because they see. It's like they have this vision. I really believe that. I think the artist can see the contours of an issue in a way that if you're just have a myopic vision, you might not catch. I just love it. I think we overlooked that. Anyway, Josh, over to you.
I was just writing down real fast. artists should share the truth. And I'd like to share some pieces of Joseph, because I think these really share the truth, his truth. So we have a few queued up. So this installation that you're looking at was inspired by the March of Dimes protest in Atlanta and after police shootings. And so Joseph bought these desks, painted them in chalkboard material, so that people could, March for Our Lives protest in Atlanta, not March of Dimes. I think that's something very different. So I stand corrected. But he just took these desks out to, I believe, City Hall or the state capitol and left them there with chalk. And he didn't know what was going to happen. As you can see, it's Joseph in the background, but it really focuses on just someone's hand wrote that hashtag never again, wrote love, wrote things we can't see on the other ones. And so to stand in his art studio when I was in Atlanta and take it in, it was eerie. What are your thoughts when y'all look at this? And we know the ongoing epidemic with school shootings in this country. And now, I've really never worried about a school shooting, but I happened to work at University of Washington too. And I remember walking to campus one day and I was like, well, what happens if something happens, if someone brings a gun to campus? That was it's crazy. So this really, I think, provides a lot of reflection. It says a lot.
Josh, on the back of one of the chair that you showed us, it said "Kids Over Guns," and it just breaks my heart. It's at the right under "Never Again." It says "Kids Over Guns." It's like, it's that simple. It's like, do we care about kids? But it turns out the country, in terms of the policies that we have, cares more about guns than about kids. And it's just so heartbreaking. I mean, I see the desks. It's a powerful image because these are children sitting in school doing
where
their
the politicians send their kids to school.
Yeah.
that don't enact laws that create gun safety.
I know.
And,
Yeah, I think that one of the things that this piece really, or these pieces really does is get to this complicated, very nuanced idea that our kids are being affected. So all of the seats being empty, all of them being lined up together, the students actually doing the writing, the chairs in black and white. There's so much going on that really makes the viewer reflect, try and understand what's happening. Sorry about that.
Just a second.
It's all good. No worry. If we can transition to the next piece of, so this, Joseph made this piece after the murder of Trayvon Martin. And what you can't quite see is that the torso is on bullet shells. And it was a massive piece, taller than me. And he said that he didn't intentionally have that final hoodie crucified across, but he just laid hoodie after hoodie after hoodie, and that is how it spoke to him. And so I think this piece speaks for itself. Karen or Chelsea, like, what are your thoughts? Chelsea, I don't know if you've ever seen this before. What do you think? What do you feel when you look at this?
Josh, I remember Joseph describing this piece. It's like looking like the hoodie, looking at all the other hoodies, and the almost like the way the arms are stretched out, almost like a crucifixion. I remember him describing that. It's very powerful and makes me very emotional to look at.
Yeah, I think this is a really, first of all, it's beautiful. I mean, if you could just start there. And it's always amazing to me when a visual artist can make something so painful beautiful. Um, and that one sculpture of the hooded person standing there, I don't know what's in the front, how it looks if you stand in front of it, if there's a face at all, but the that one standing there is almost ominous, and really gives me a visceral reaction to the piece. It's just it's very thought provoking, very very interesting,
I
remarkable.
agree. I actually wrote a piece entitled Trayvon. Is it okay if I recite it for you all?
Absolutely, Josh.
All right. So I originally wrote this in the summer of 2013. It's currently 2022 and still relevant. I often wonder who you could have been. Trayvon Martin, an African-American adolescent murdered over suspicion. In truth, African Americans are murdered by deeply rooted racism that seeks to deprive our right to vote. Politician politic for our vote, then pass legislation suppressing our right to vote. They're the same people who will quote King and tell you, we must keep his dream alive. Yet the Senate hasn't passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Maybe it's all an act, political theater. What's not an act and real across this nation is their racism. It's embodied in its living form of police officers trained to keep African Americans in an enslaved state. Policing was born out of catching slaves. In the present day, the police don't return Blacks back to the plantation, they murder them instead. Neighborhood watch coordinators stand their ground as they racially profile. George Zimmerman let his trigger finger be the judge, jury, and executioner. Trayvon was 17 when racially charged bullets were introduced into his skin, taking his life. Dear minoritized youth, be careful when you wear a hoodie walking down dimly lit streets in the cover of night, because bigots will mistake your Arizona iced tea and bag of Skittles for weapons. Society has a history of viewing your ethnicity as a threat to the patriarchal establishment, and I can't keep seeing Black lives murdered. Be careful. Your genius is meant to thrive. The $1 million question I have for you is why do bullets keep piercing Black lives? Do our lives have value? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. A lot of y'all worship silence and only take action after brutal Black death. So I ask, what are you doing to preserve Black lives? When parents live in a world of darkness because their loved ones can't rise from the dead, the youth are our future and not a threat to your well-being. As a minoritized person in this country, you're born guilty before you're innocent. So here's insight into my life. I live under a constant helicopter of spotlights. Judgment burns my skin with each step I take. I know I am enough. If it wasn't for the Loving vs. Virginia case, I would be born a sin. Maybe the police want us to be born again, free of sin. So they murder, so they kill Black lives to be born again, free of sin. I'm not Moses, but when I walk down the Beltline or Broadway on Cap Hill, crowds of people part like the Red Sea. Security guards follow my every step. Purses seem to fear me because they alternate hands as they come into my presence. Traits of being a 6'3" Black male, watching people cross the street as you approach. Children run and hide when I come near. Maybe it's the tattoos they fear. At times I think, am I the Black Plague? Does my stature remind you of someone you've seen in an episode of Cops? Have you seen my face on a t-shirt or a sign? No, you haven't. And I pray you never do. Black people deserve to live long lives and die in natural ways. But before we go, can we say their names so we never forget them? December 28th, 1998, Tisha Miller. May 8th, 2003, Kendra James. November 21st, 2006, Katherine Johnston. January 4th, 2008, Tarika Wilson. January 1st, 2009, Oscar Grant III. May 6, 2010, Stanley Jones. August 10th, 2010, John T. Williams. February 26, 2012, Trayvon Martin. March 22nd, 2012, Rakia Boyd. June 14th, 2012, Chantel Davis. November 29th, 2012, Melissa Williams. December 2nd, 2012, Darnisha Harris. December 6th, 2012, Shelley Frett. October 3rd, 2013, Miriam Carey. February 16th, 2014, Yvette Smith. January 17th, 2014, Eric Gardner. August 4th, 2014, Mike Brown Jr. November 12th, 2014, Tanisha Anderson. November 22nd, 2014, Tamir Wright. November 4th, 2015, Walter Scott. April 12th, 2015, Freddie Gray. July 13th, 2015, Sandra Bland. July 19th, 2015, Samuel Du Bois. July 5th, 2016, Alton Sterling. July 6th, 2016, Philando Castile. August 1st, 2016, Karen Gaines. May 13th, 2019, Pamela Turner. August 13th, 2019, Elijah McClain. August 12th, 2019, Atiana Jefferson. February 23rd, 2020, Ahmaud Arbery. March 3rd, 2020, Manuel Ellis. March 13th, 2020, Breonna Taylor. March 25th, 2020, George Floyd. June 12th, 2020, Rayshad Brooks. March 29th, 2021, Adam Toledo. April 11th, 2021, Dante Wright. April 20th, 2021, Micaiah Bryant. Never forget these people. Never forget these beautiful people who were taken. The bullets didn't serve and protect them. The police bullets killed them. They were loved. They are loved. Their life had value. Their life has value. Speak of them in the present tense. Their presence is amongst us forever. Say their names. My final question is, do I look suspicious?
Thank you for that.
Thank you both for this conversation. And when I look at this image, I see the names. I see the names. And I see the bullet shells that took them from those who were loved. And now it's on us to continue to fight. Now it's on us to continue to actually make Dr. Martin Luther King's dream a reality and to create this beloved community, because it starts with you, and it has to. You have the power to create the change. Just a matter of how intentional are you going to be about creating it. Chelsea, if you have final thoughts. Karen, if you have final thoughts.
Thank you, Josh, for sharing this really overwhelming and beautiful and horrible and everything. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think we have to say their names and remember and never forget. I think each of us should think about how we can use our gifts to stand up in solidarity. I want to just mention that a fantastic veteran of the human rights movement, Hafida Ben Shahida, texted me while we were in this program saying she's watching from Algeria. This is a global struggle, you know, and we have to stand in our common humanness the way you just did with us, Josh, and Chelsea, the way you do with your work as an educator and an artist. I'm really grateful to share this space with you both. And I just encourage everyone to think how to say it starts with me. It starts with me. Read the book Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, which will take you inside the story of systemic racism in this country. Get Chelsea's book, support the artists like Chelsea. All Water Has Perfect Memory, I think is the name of the book, right? And really support artists who are doing this work and be an artist. Thank you, Josh, for pulling this program together, and Chelsea for being here.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you, Josh. I am this talk actually gave me some motivation to continue the work that I'm doing with young people and continue making art. And I think that if I could just reiterate what you said, Karen, and that we have to make art in order to bring awareness to these struggles. I think that's what I would leave people with, is just to continue doing it, just continue being artists. And Josh, thank you for that really powerful piece. And I'd like to thank the Carter Center as well.
And thank you to our audience. Thank you to Jason Parker for helping to put all this together. We couldn't do it without you. And thank you to our community. We hope to continue to engage with you, and we look forward to being and holding space with you in the future. Our next roundtable will be January 25th. Please look for the time on our website form, and Kareem will be coming back talking about Arab Spring and protest music during that time. So thank you, and good morning, potentially, good night, good evening, and keep the dream alive. Karen?
Thank you. Just thank you.